My name is Dave Danielson, and welcome to this version of Longview. It's been a while since we've done this, but it's not a more appropriate time to take a long view of what's going on today because of the tumult that we find our government, our businesses, and our whole population, actually. So I'm going to introduce our guest today is Bill Greiner, and many folks will know Bill he's a resident of Bedford, a long-time resident of Bedford now. And he is also a small business owner, and he is not president of, but he is a primary owner of Primary Bank. And Bill, so welcome to the Longview, and thanks for joining us today too.
Thanks, Dave.
So Bill, the first question I have is, given the economic turmoil that we're in today, and the obvious damage it's done to a lot of small businesses, what is the condition right now, do you think, of the small businesses in New Hampshire and in particularly in Bedford?
Dave, that's a great question. I think a lot of businesses are in kind of shutdown mode at this point. They're either not operating, if you're in the restaurant business or you're a retailer, or you're working with somewhat of a limited capacity. Most folks are working from home. Essential work is pretty limited at this point in time. So you're in a situation where there's a certain segment of businesses that are not even operational right now. And then there's some that are, again, limited operationally, but then there's a revenue issue because you've got businesses that are not operating, so then they're not able to pay their bills. And so you're in a situation now where there's a lot of turmoil and uncertainty. And when I talk to business owners, whether they're here in Bedford or anywhere in the state or even across the country, there's a lot of concern and angst about the future.
Right. And the future, the government is trying to help, obviously, and it's rolled out one of these programs. We're going to be talking about some of these programs in a moment, but they're calling this phase one of the resuscitation plan. And I heard or just read that there's a possibility that there are more than one of these plans coming out. Are you aware of those, or do you know what they might be?
Yes, and the one act, the CARES Act, that was passed, and that was the one that received quite a bit of support. That passed 96-0 in the U.S. Senate, which is something we frankly haven't seen since 9/11. Was pretty encompassing, and and in there was the Payroll Protection Act, or PPP is what they call it, and that was where they set aside $349 billion that would be used to help keep employers in business by allowing employees to be paid through the SBA program. And it was geared for businesses that had 500 employees or less, with two exceptions. The exceptions being if you're a restaurant operator, you had less than 500 in one location, or hotel operator with the same parameters, because those industries were really wiped out on paper from this. And then there was another part of that was the economic injury disaster relief, and that's a direct SBA program. So whereas the PPP, you apply through a bank or a credit union, and then that goes through SBA. So there's an intermediary there, if you will. The economic injury disaster relief is a straight, I believe it's a $10,000 program. You go right to SBA. You can apply for both, but you have to subtract 10 that from the SBA PPP program. You cannot double dip. So those are the two big things in there. And you're right, just today, Dave, they talked about expanding that. So another $250 billion being added to the 349 to make sure there's enough money to cover this. And then they are talking about another phase, as you just mentioned. On top of that, I think the Senate's supposed to take that up in the next 24 hours or so, followed by the House. And given where we are, I mean, those are big numbers. Maybe 5 years ago, we would have been more skeptical. Frankly, they're doing everything they can do and have to do to keep this economy from completely collapsing to where it just can't come back.
Right. And I think one of the things that don't concern people, but I think one of the things that probably sounds like a negative when you first heard it, particularly small businesses, when they heard the SBA was involved, because it usually implies bureaucracy. But I've heard, and you would you'd know this, but I've heard that they're doing very well in trying to process these loans that are coming through.
So let me give you an example of that, Dave. So you're right. The SBA, it's a government agency. A lot of businesses across the country participate in SBA loans or different loans for different types of businesses or different uses. Great programs. Ultimately, it allows banks to lend money knowing that the government will stand behind some of these loans or percentage of these loans. Usually it's up to 50% guarantee, which again, it's good because some of the startups and riskier ventures, have the backing. People can go forward knowing that there's kind of shared risk in those endeavors, but could be a cumbersome, process, and for good reason. There has to be good underwriting on that. So there was some concern when they said SBA was going to be making these loans, but they're making them again through the lenders, and the lenders are underwriting them. So a bank like Primary Bank or any other SBA lender can do those loans. But they've made it extremely efficient. When we got the application last, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday before the program went live, we were shocked. It's 4 pages, 2 of which are simply glossary and definitions. It's a 2-page application. Most of it's just checking boxes off. The most simplistic form I have ever seen in my life for loans. So they have clearly gotten a message from Treasury: get it done quickly, no bureaucracy. And so that's what was rolled out to folks. It went live on Friday, and I know that people have complained about it, in terms of banks, that it was too onerous or they didn't have clarity. Our bank, we're a small bank. We're based here in Bedford. We are about a $300 million bank, which is small in the realm of things. We process loans Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So through the weekend, SBA was live through the weekend. We had approvals, not just our approval internally, because we have to underwrite the loan, and then we send it on to SBA electronically. These are instantaneously approved by SBA, not a 5-minute delay, not a 1-hour delay, instantaneous from when we submit it. It couldn't be more simple, in my opinion. Again, I've heard horror stories in the media. Firsthand, we haven't experienced it, and we're just a small bank here in Bedford. So I think it's been pretty smooth. We have been able to, respond to the needs. You started off the conversation, Dave, what's it like out there? When I talk to business owners, they are concerned about the ability to reopen their doors, or to keep their doors open, or to keep their employees employed. Those are real concerns, because this is unlike anything that we've ever seen, well beyond the widespread issue of 2008. So 2008 was generally confined to financial institutions, banks, and insurance companies, because they made some poor business choices, in my opinion, but it didn't spread all over. This affects everybody. And so I hear that concern. I see that concern, in dealing with folks. But I have to tell you, the government, if anybody were going to draw up a plan to get us out of this, the plan that the government has drawn up through Treasury, and whether you like Mnuchin or you don't, right? He comes from the financial services industry. He's a very smart guy. And as somebody in Senator Shaheen's office told me today, the brightest economic minds are sitting in Treasury now. They understand that they will get this figured out. It is happening, Dave. Let me give you where we sit today. Through now, we have $66.9 million that we have received SBA approval on for our customers, and for what I would call some orphan customers of other banks that are either not participating in this or they haven't rolled it out yet. So just under $70 million that we have SBA approval on in 4 days, 4 business days. 218 small businesses are receiving these loans. That's a lot.
Is that in New Hampshire?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
In New Hampshire. It makes a difference, Dave. And that's us doing our part. If everybody does their part, or most banks and credit unions do their part, we will be able to stand in there and hold this economic collapse off long enough to let the crisis pass and keep people in business and employed. And if you'd like, I can give you an explanation. Why is this good for employers? Why for employees? This is the best program for that.
That was going to be my last question.
Sorry, Dave.
But you certainly can go ahead right now and answer that. That's good, because that's on people's minds, Bill. So
yeah. So what this does is an employer can take 2.5 times their average 2018 payroll. So for argument's sake, let's just say that an employer had a payroll of $1.2 million last year. So the average would have been $100,000 a month. So they're allowed to multiply that by 2.5. So they can come in and borrow $250,000 as part of this program. And as long as they spend 75% to retain or rehire employees to maintain a high percentage of where they were last year, the other 25% of that loan would be used, they could pay rent or mortgage, utilities, insurance, things like that. So, and that also included, you can factor into that payroll number health insurance so that you continue to pay health insurance. You can factor into that dental insurance. And in our state, we have the old BET. So again, that's a payroll cost. So what it does is it allows people to, whether they're staying home or going to work, and in most cases, you're really going to be paid to stay at home because we need to do that right now. Right. But they're going to make the same money they were making 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago. The idea behind that is that instead of going on unemployment and taking a reduced benefit, you collect what you did. It's not coming off the back of the business, right? It's being paid for essentially through the government, as long as the business owner takes the money and applies it correctly. Right. So that when we come out of this, everybody has essentially the same disposable income, the same individual cash flow that they had before this crisis. And if the employer, as I say, spends 75% on wages, this loan will be forgiven at the end of the 2 or 3 month period of the loan, which is great. Now, the backside, it means that ultimately the taxpayers will pick this expense up later. I would argue that it's a very small cost and price to pay to keep the economy virtually intact. And so this will, as I say, allows the businesses to stay open because they can afford to pay their employees without going into debt themselves and not being able to repay it and never get out of that hole. So the government is backstopping folks. Think of it as an unemployment insurance program direct to employers to give to employees to keep everybody ready to go. So when you come out of this, you'll have the money that you would have had before, so you can go out and buy that car, maybe take that vacation, do what, get back to life as normal without bankrupting every single business in America. That's probably what
I think, and I think that's important because, after 2008, I think there's a lot of cynicism built into the system when we heard that the government was going to try to support something. So the question I guess I would have is, the way you've presented it is, the risk to the public is very small, but the benefits to the public are great.
Here's the risk to the public, Dave. And, people are not going to like to hear this, but they're going to have to hear it. They're going to hear it from me. They're going to hear it from the president. They're going to hear it from the members of Congress. It doesn't matter who your president is, Republican or Democrat. You're going to hear this. We are going to have to see tax rates go up, whether we want to or not. It's a function of, you want to save the economy and pay a little more and everybody's in it together, or we just spiral and nobody wants to spiral. Nobody wants to pay higher taxes. I don't even think that's a discussion point anymore. I think we need to do what we need to do to save the economy. I've seen numbers that ultimately we're going to see $7 trillion in bailout money, for programs like this and across the board. And another program that I heard today would be a program for people that have companies with more than 500 employees, where everybody's affected, big, small, medium, it doesn't matter. So if $7 trillion, it's a third of the economy, the economic activity in a year. It sounds like a lot, but if you can, spread that over many, many, many years through financing, taxes are going to have to go up, not draconian levels, certainly, but they have to do it to save it. The good piece of this, Dave, when you borrow money, is we are literally borrowing money for nothing. They're talking about 20 and 30 brand new year bonds, 1.75% interest. So yes, we have to pay it back, but if you can pay it back over a really long period of time to save your economy and save the economic system that we have, I think it's the right thing to do. And I think they're doing the right thing. You've got bipartisanship on both sides. I mean, everybody's in on this. It's all in, and it's the right decision.
A question I have is, I'm familiar with some of the very small businesses, those that are involved in the arts, for example. Small museums, small art stores, individual contractors, singers, for example, or bars that have entertainment. Are they going to be eligible for these loans as well?
Great question. So without naming names, we have approved loans for um, art institutions that would be in our area that might be nonprofit. We have approved loans for small businesses that, whether they sell artwork or they sell clothing or apparel. We've done that. We've approved loans for several restaurants in the area, Manchester, Bedford, other communities. We have approved, I believe, a loan for a hotel, maybe a couple of hotels. It's really across the board, and there are no, and you can do nonprofits too. So as a, whether it was, this is not a customer, so as an example, we could, the United Way would be one. The United Way Manchester would be one that could qualify, I believe. But they're not. That's an example. They're not a customer. I don't want to suggest that we've given them a loan because we haven't. But it's really across the board. If you have 500 employees, you're for-profit or you're 501c3, as long as you're doing business here in the U.S. and you've been in business before February 15th of 2020, then you're eligible. There will also be another program that rolls out in a few days, Dave, for people who are self-employed or for independent contractors. Think about that. If you're a real estate agent, you're probably an independent contractor. So you don't get you're not on the payroll per se. Those folks will be able to come and apply in the next couple of days. As I said, as well, let's just say you're a solo practitioner and you're a single doctor, or you're sole proprietor in a business. You have that open to you very, very shortly. They're going to touch everybody, Dave, because you can't just save certain sections of this economy. You can't just save certain businesses or certain types, which is why I think it's good they came out today and said there's a new program for over 500 employees. You need everybody is in this together. It's not a partisan issue. It's not a type of business issue. It's not a size of business issue. It's an economic issue that has to be solved uniformly.
Right. And another question I had was on the, actually that question that I had just then was reminiscent of back in the Great Depression. One of the things that helped us out in New Hampshire, one of the things that helped us out was actually the small businesses. The small arts and crafts businesses kept families going back in those times. And that's kind of what prompted that question. So I really appreciate your response there.
And again, the majority of our, so we've had loans that we've been approved, Dave. I think our smallest one was $5,000. So $5,000 would represent, 2.5 times somebody's average monthly payroll.
Right.
So that's how small. That again, it gets really down to really small level. And I want to say that our biggest one we've approved is about $3 million. So that would be, again, that's $3 million. That'd be 2.5 times 1 month's payroll of a company that has less than 500 employees. So
what are some other benefits that I'm not aware of that you've probably listened to or talked to when you talk to the government? What are some other benefits that we see coming through that's going to benefit our small businesses and as well as our employees?
So I think there are on the restaurant side, they're giving, if you hire back your employees now, because that, again, that could be a longer lag, people not wanting to be in, crowded areas, restaurants, and they're busy, they're crowded. So they've given tax credits as well per employee that you hire back. They're trying to do that. I think they've got some tax credits again for hotels, same thing. To go to a hotel, you probably had to fly somewhere. People are concerned about, that. So the hotels the airlines are big business, and you think, well, hotels are big business. They're actually not. When you go to a Holiday Inn or you go to a Hilton, those are generally owned by franchisees. So it's not as if Hilton is essentially managing the brand. So they are small businesses in that respect. So they're looking to see where different impacts are. I'm going to guess they're going to take another look at retail. There are multiple versions of assistance that will come along in future legislation. And I think as they hear from more industries and more people that are affected, they're going to tweak what they need to tweak to make sure that everybody is included and there's nobody that's left out.
That's good. And you're one of the guys, your business is one of the businesses on the front line right now, as far as small businesses are concerned. And in New Hampshire, small business is business in New Hampshire. So thanks for what your bank is doing and some of the other small banks that have jumped in and is helping as well. So we appreciate that. Are there any downsides that we should be aware of, that the public should be aware of to these programs that are coming up?
No,
Taxes you
I would
mentioned,
say
but that's
that,
going to be in the future.
yeah, I think that there was some concern, Dave, about fraud. And you're always going to have bad apples no matter where you go, no matter what you do. And thankfully, it's always a small percentage. Um, so what they've done is the SBA and the government have guaranteed the banks, indemnification against anything that would go on with that. And the reason for that is they want us to continue to lend and not worry and get bogged down into, the weeds and slow this process down. But they are going to audit this and be cognizant. So if your average payroll was 10,000 a month last year, and you write down 30, and you go buy yourself a Lamborghini, you're probably going to have a problem. And so I think that as long as you're doing, follow the guidelines, do what the program is designed to do, you're not going to have problems, and it's going to work for everybody. And as I said, I think that almost everybody is going to do the right thing. It's what makes us who we are. So I would say people need to, follow guidelines, and that keeps folks out of trouble. Again, I think the breadth and scope of this program in general is such that it will do what it's supposed to do. It will save companies, and it will save jobs. And when we come out of this crisis, and we will in the next, several weeks, we can start to get back to normalcy, spend some money, people go back to work and feel better about this. And I think these programs are good. I have to tell you, I've had conversations at least weekly with our governor. He gets it. He's been very responsive. He wants to know how businesses are doing. He's very plugged in. I have weekly conversations with Senator Shaheen personally, as well as her staffers. They care. Everybody is paying attention to this. It doesn't matter what party you are. It doesn't matter what your position is. The people in leadership, whether it's in New Hampshire or in DC, they get it, and they're very, very responsive. As I say, I haven't seen things like this since 9/11, David. I knew you in 9/11, and the world changed overnight, and people came together. You're seeing that, and you're feeling that again right now.
That was one of the last questions I was going to ask, actually, was is the governor. The governor, I know because I'm involved with the finance committee, but I know that the governor has been very aggressive and assertive in trying to help small businesses get back up and at the same time, protect the individuals here in the state. So I was glad to hear that you feel he's working very closely with the businesses, particularly the banks, in making sure that people can get back up.
He called me Tuesday on his way back from work just to see how we were doing. I had sent he and his Commissioner of Economic Development, Taylor Caswell, who
Yep.
A quick text telling him how many loans we had gotten approved through Tuesday and the dollar amount. And within 10 minutes, he called me blown away because of some of the media reports about the program not being accessible or being clunky or people having concerns. And he was very happy to hear that. He asked me, what kind of businesses and what else can we do to help? What do you need from us, in the state? It's the response that you want. And,
Right.
He has business background, but he's there for everybody. This is not partisan. He's there for our state. He's there for our businesses. He's there for the employers. He's there for the residents. People need to know that. Again, other side of the aisle, if I had a conversation with Senator Shaheen, which I had yesterday, it's the same questions, the same concern.
Excellent. Thanks. Bill, I want to thank you very much for taking some time out of your day to speak with me about, and to the people of Bedford and the people of the state about how things are going, because you're right. There have been a lot of negative thoughts that have gone through, particularly from the national press, I think, and that's kind of filtered down and kind of affected people's overall attitude. So I think the positive things that you've said today and the positive things that the industries here in New Hampshire are doing are really good, and I want to thank you very much for that, and thank your colleagues as well.
Dave, I appreciate it very much, and I would tell folks, don't believe everything you read, don't believe everything you hear. There are good people that are on this, whether it's in our community or in DC, and everybody's working together and pulling together. And I think that's the message people need to have, is this too will pass. Excellent.
Thanks, Bill. And again, thank you for joining us today on the Longview on BCTV. And of course, our godfather who's sitting behind us, Bill Jennings, and we want to thank him for him orchestrating the presentation. So thank you very much, Bill. Again, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dave.
Take care and be safe.